from the racing capital of the world, Indianapolis, Indiana. Welcome back, everybody, to the greatest spectacle in podcasting, the Seventh Gear Overrev Show. As per usual, I am your host, Kevin Krause, alongside my good friend and partner in podcast crime, the one and only Mr. John McGrath. John, buddy, how are you?
Great, Kevin. Glad to be back.
Boy, it has been a hot minute, ladies and gentlemen, our fans of the Seventh Year Overrev Show, since we dropped an episode, and all for this. This is actually the first thing we want to talk about, is this great new format alongside the wizard behind the curtain. You can't see him, but you can sure see that the work he's doing. Our good friend and producer, JD, in the background there. I know you can't see him, but welcome to the show, JD. Glad to have you part of the team, buddy.
Thanks, Kevin. Glad to be here.
So, this is kind of the new age of the Seventh Gear Overrev Show. John, I know we're trying to do a little bit more of a video format here. In previous seasons, we've only had it be audio only, along with some social media posts and that sort of thing. But I'm really excited about this new format because with the guests that we've got coming up in 2025, we are actually going to be able to see them, which has been a big request from a lot of our listeners, to not just hear us, but see our beautiful faces of radio, but also our guests.
That's an opinion, but okay.
That's what my dad used to say in the radio business. He goes, "I've got a face for radio." So that's part of that. But now we'll get to see our guests. We'll get to actually show some video in the background that is pertinent to the topics that we'll be talking about this weekend. But man, this is going to be super cool stuff, gang. I hope you're as excited about it as we are. Please, make sure that you're hitting us up on all of our social media to give us your feedback. But John, this is a whole new deal for us, isn't it? I'm pretty stoked about it. I don't know about you, but I think we're going to be in great shape here moving forward.
No, and I'm glad we took the time to kind of step back and kind of reinvent the show a little bit. It's going to still be us being our usual hateful selves, but we are, I think this is the natural progression, to be honest. I mean, every podcast has some sort of video component these days, and this is just for us to be able to maintain and continue and evolve and grow. And hopefully as time goes on with our guests, as you mentioned, and how we like to discuss things, we can even grab a larger audience, because some people do want to see the interaction of people, not just through the audio side of things. And of course, the audio component will still be there. So if you're in your car or whatever, but to have an actual video component to this now that will, as you said, we could show B-roll, we could show cool stuff now. And of course, with JD, thank you very much for helping us get this all off the ground.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and you made a great point there, John, is like, don't sweat, Seventh Gear Overrev fans. You're still going to be able to get the audio-only version of this, just like you have over the 20-plus podcast directories, because we're still fortunate enough to say that we're at about 8,000 downloads since we started this venture here back in the COVID era, and we're heard in 55 countries. So we're on a roll, and this is just going to allow us to catapult to the next level, as well as be able to post to our YouTube channel and do some live streaming and across multiple platforms. This is going to be a great deal. But with all that said, and again, we hope you love it as much as we do, because we're really excited about it. But we've got a lot of shit to talk about, because we've been off for the last 6 months or so. And there's more to talk about than we have time or hours in the day. But being that this is the final F1 weekend of the season and the championship title has basically been decided in terms of the Drivers' Championship, there's still a couple of key pieces of info to talk about, and none bigger. Forget about Max Verstappen winning his 4th straight world title. Fuck that guy, but we'll get to that here in a minute. The biggest story to me in Formula One right now is what's going on with the Andretti Cadillac F1 program, because now, lo and behold, with Michael Andretti giving up his ownership role and turning it over to Dan Towridge, I think is his name, of the Gainbridge folks, now suddenly Formula One's opened their arms. And now we're going to have Cadillac as the 11th team starting in 2026. Can you believe it, John?
I knew something was going on when Michael was suddenly stepping down out of nowhere. Like, we were just kind of like, what, why, what's going on? Because obviously it's his baby. Then all of a sudden, what is it, like a month or so later, we hear, oh, yeah, Cadillac's in now. And then, I don't know, was it a sneaky move, Kevin, that all of a sudden Mario is on the board of directors for the racing side? I thought it was just like,
right?
What? Like, is this something they're like, okay, yeah, we'll get rid of Andretti, Michael?
Yeah,
then they
is
went
there
to
just that?
then they
I
and
mean,
then it's just
that
gonna be
was
Mario in the
what?
background listening to Michael. That's all it's gonna be.
Right.
So I don't
And it's
understand.
like,
It's just a
is that
bizarre thing.
hatred? It's such a bizarre thing. I mean, is the hatred for Michael so bad that nobody's forgotten about the mid '90s when he was teamed
Right.
up with
That's
Ayrton
that's
Senna?
what
Is it still that pervasive? I mean, has that
that's
generation of F1 fans not all died?
you would- I mean, I guess not. I mean, I knew that Liberty Media, their president, had a problem with Michael. I forget his name right now,
Well,
but
and even
there
there,
was an issue
Maffei is
there.
stepping down.
He's going away too. It's like, so we get rid of the two problem children, and then everything's okay. And but you still had people like Helmet from Red Bull still complaining about the dilution fee. They're like, oh, they didn't pay enough. Meanwhile, it was like some bonkers amount of money that Cadillac is having to pay. It's like, how is that still not enough? I don't understand.
Well, it's interesting because I caught up with the Racer's own Marshall Pruitt at the Velocity Historics in early November, just as this whole thing was breaking about Michael stepping back and relinquishing, his,
Yeah,
majority ownership stake of the team and blah blah blah. And I mean, for seventh year over of listeners, I know you know who Marshall Pruitt is, John. I know you do too, but Marshall was very pointed in saying, I don't believe it for a minute in terms of, it just sounded shady. There's something else going on. It's not like suddenly Michael was going to just voluntarily step back after they've spent all these years trying to push this Formula One thing. Plus, they acquired the facility at Silverstone, right?
yeah, that was the
And
other thing I was
they're
going to say.
building
They
this.
had that whole thing. Yeah,
Right. And that 500,000 square foot facility that they're building 10 minutes from my house here in Indy is well on its way. And it's supposed to house basically everything. Not to mention the fact, like you said, you got Mario on the board for this Cadillac racing program. You've also got uh, now Colton Herta still being mentioned as a possible driver alongside God knows who. Maybe it's Danny Rick, for
God, I
a
hope it's
veteran
Danny Rick.
presence, which I think that would be fantastic, but
Yeah,
there's just too many unknowns there, and there's too much money that Towridge that's now the head of the team. Have you noticed? Even though it says Cadillac Racing, the Andretti Global stuff is not fully removed from any of that branding. So
correct.
there's more to this story, and I know Mario's trying to come out and play the patriarch of the family and say, well, it really was, there's no animosity. Michael's just happy for the team that it's happening and all this other stuff. And I say that's fucking bullshit. There's more to the story than that.
Oh, I fully agree to that as well. It was just too easy and too quick, right? Like, how come all of a sudden when Michael just suddenly goes away, it's everything's right with the world now? I mean, like you said, what was going on behind the scenes?
Right.
Like, I was also wondering too, and you had brought this up when we were texting here a few days ago. Did it have something to do with that congressional investigation or whatever it was going to be about the monopolization or the not allowing an American
Right.
team to enter Formula One? Was that also a part of this? I don't know. The only thing I do know is that we're not getting the full story. That's what I do know.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, this could be, just like some of the other political shit that's going on in the country where it's like they don't want us to know the whole story, and we may or may not. I think there's going to be more things get leaked out here as time goes on, and
Sure.
folks change teams, personnel, things change, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there was just way too many, particularly financial resources poured into this thing, and certainly Towridge with the Gainbridge and the Group 1001 folks. I mean, I think he's part owner of the LA Dodgers as well. So it was
Yeah.
because of that money that allowed them to build this new building and acquire Silverstone and be able to have the leverage to court somebody like GM. So
And wasn't it too like
we shall see.
$650 million or something like that that Cadillac has to pay up? Did I read that correctly?
Um, I think that's still up for debate because as the current Concord Agreement reads, the anti-dilution fee is $200 million. And when this
Right.
all became the first point of contention, guys like Toto and Helmut and, even I think Vasseur was making the comment that, oh, it should be much more than that. It's like, well, listen, you assholes, you're the one who just approved the latest Concord Agreement. If you're
Sure.
not going to live by it, then screw you guys. Wait till your
Right.
next Concord Agreement coming up. I think it's in 26, and then go ahead and change the anti-dilution fee to what you feel is proper based on the value of your current F1 franchise, because they had made some comment early on that they thought that the anti-dilution fee should be more in line, and I can't believe they pegged this as their example. And I think you and I have talked about this in the past. When the Seattle Kraken NHL team was approved to join the league a few years ago, they had to pay an expansion fee of like $600 or $650 million. That was non-refundable. So the F1, power brokers, literally the mafia. That's what these guys are. Is the mob?
Right. It's
Decided that
payoff
was-
money. Right.
Seriously. They said it should be more like that, and I'm like, okay, 600 or 650 million versus 200 million. It's like, fuck you guys. You're trying to manipulate the rules. This is what the Concord Agreement says. You live by it until you guys then all together create a new Concord Agreement. And then you can go ahead and you can make it $1 billion if you want. I don't care. But live with the agreement that you guys all put together that you're living under now.
Well, it's pretty typical for the F1 whole like culture, though, isn't it? It's this whole like, it's the boys' club of, well, you can't come in. And no, this is our little thing. But if you want in, you're gonna have to pay. Well, here's the dilution fee of 200 million. No, that's not good enough. That's exactly what this seems like to me. It's like, well, if you want in, you're gonna pay for the exclusivity of being part of Formula One.
Well, but it's also who you know, right? Because now we've got Flavio Briatore back in the fucking paddock. What the hell? That guy was banned for life, and now he's back. Seriously. Jesus.
It's Formula One. I
It's
mean, when
just
has it ever
ridiculous.
been in the history of it, though? When has it ever been as straightforward as it should be, or as we think as it should be? It never has.
It's so Machiavellian.
Yeah.
It's just so Machiavellian, I swear to God.
Yeah,
And that's the part that I hate about the sport. All right.
Same.
We could go on a rant about this for forever.
Yeah.
So, but let's move into more matters of the moment, shall we say, in Formula One. So, Max, like I said, 4th straight title.
Yep.
Great. Great.
Hey, listen.
Now
I mean,
go race in the WEC.
For a while, he's not retiring. But for a while, though, at least mid-season, was really looking like Lando was going to come out on top of this whole thing. And we'll get into the McLaren strategies here in a bit. But if we look at the season as a whole, it certainly wasn't that Red Bull domination that we all sort of expected once again for the last 3 years. Fortunately, at least in my opinion, and I to my me being bragging here, I did say before the season started, let's just wait and see. Let's see how it goes. This might not turn out to be a phenomenal season. So far, yes, Max has won the Drivers' Championship, but so far, it's been a great season for the fans as far as, different drivers winning. Finally, it's not just Max out by 40 seconds every race. It's legitimate racing that he's having to actually, and to his credit, I mean, even this morning, did you see qualifying yet for this morning?
I didn't get to see it, but I just know who's on the front row.
Okay, so he got pole, but as he was coming around the last corner, the back end of the car started to come around. He was able to still keep one wheel on the track, not have the car slam into the pit side, and still get pole. Listen, I'm not really crazy about the guy's personality, but holy fucking shit, that man did that. And it was incredible. I mean, I don't know of any other driver. I mean, Lewis, maybe. But it was an incredible thing to see of how he's completely lost control of the car. It didn't spin somehow because that ass end was just gone. Was able to pull it out, not hit the wall, and keep going straight, and then still get pole. I don't know anybody else who could do that right now, to be honest. Like I said, maybe Lewis. That's really about all. So, credit to him. He's the world champion once again. I don't know what it's going to be like next year. I don't think he will be. I think if McLaren stays on the track they're on, I think you're going to have Lando as your next champion. That's just my personal opinion. But it was a great season, though. But it was just a fantastic season.
From what I had said early in the season, and I had said it all last year, I'm like, Formula One for a stretch there was unwatchable for me. because I was
Sure.
tired, like most people were, of watching Max run off to a 40-second lead and everybody else battling for second, right?
Sure.
So I am grateful into this holiday season for the fact that we actually have a watchable product with some new talent. We're seeing Lando emerge. We're seeing Piastri emerge. We're seeing some drama, in essentially what's going to happen for next year with Adrian Newey moving over to Aston Martin and what effect that's going to have, with Lewis Hamilton getting ready to move to Ferrari, and see how that's going to interact with Leclerc, and what's going to happen with Sainz, those driver changes, which we'll get into a little bit more. But, and I actually, and I kind of can't believe I'm saying this, because I do give Max credit for being a very, obviously they're all talented at that level, but particularly him, and he was able to do that effectively with one hand tied behind his back, because he got virtually zero help from Perez, from Checo, at any point this season. Checo, this is the reason why they're sitting third in the constructors championship right now.
Correct. Yeah, it's I mean, we can only place blame in one spot, and it's Perez, unfortunately. Listen, the guy has not produced the numbers he should have, and it's the same car. I believe that Red Bull are giving him the same car. I don't believe there's any sort of favoritism as far as upgrades go or how the car performs. He's getting the exact same car as Max, and Checo has not been able to produce any sort of decent result nearly half the year. And I think that's what's bothering me the most. And I used to really root for him. Now, not so much. And I'll tell you why. I feel like lately his attitude has been, well, I've got a contract. I don't care. Bro, I'm sure there is some clause somewhere that's an escape clause for either party, because usually that's how they build those Formula One contracts. I don't understand how he just has this just sort of like lazy output or outlook on how he's performing. And like, it just doesn't seem like the man gives a shit. He's just like, well, I'm the number 2 driver and that's just how it is. Red Bull is eventually gonna cut ties. I think they are. I think they're gonna be done. I don't care how much money, because I know the big thing has always been the sponsorship money. I think they are at a
Mm-hmm.
point to where they're gonna say, we don't give a flying fuck about your money anymore. You are making us look bad. Now, because now McLaren and Ferrari are now fighting for the constructors championship. And while that may not be as exciting for the fans as the drivers championship is, it means a whole fuckload of cash on the constructor side. Because even if you're like looking at the midfield, like with Haas and those other guys, like one spot means like $13 million. And for a midfield team, that's a whole lot of fucking money. So I think it's going to come to a point where Red Bull's just going to be like, we don't care about your sponsorship money anymore. Hit the road.
Well, that's exactly right. And I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking it's like, and I don't have the exact numbers, and so I don't know how much sponsorship money that Checo
Right.
is
No, I have
bringing to
no
the
idea
table,
either.
but is what he's bringing to the table financially greater or less than the difference between winning the constructors championship and third place where they sit? $13 million, 15, $30 million, maybe,
Yeah.
we don't know. But at some
Yeah.
point, whatever he's bringing does not equate to where they should be. They should at least be fighting for second, if not fighting for the overall constructors championship. And I think too, I just read this within the last day or so that Christian Horner even admitted that maybe signing Checo to the contract extension was a bit premature, and it didn't work out for them. So I fully expect to see Checo getting jettisoned off here after this weekend. And I don't know if it'll be Liam Lawson, I don't know if they're going to bring in somebody from the Cash App RB team, or how they're going to play that. But I have a hard time believing that they're gonna ask Checo to come back and do the same fucking thing again next year, when everybody else is already going to be ahead of them, and they're likely going to be one of the underdogs to win a fifth drivers championship.
Sure. I mean, I think if it were me personally, I would hope they bring on Yuki Tsunoda in that position. I think he's the most deserving of it, because let's face it, that kid's driven a tractor all year, and he's actually done pretty decently with it. I don't know what the hang up there is. I think it has something to do with Helmet not wanting him in that seat, and I don't know why. I don't know if there's something going on there between those two. But I'm with you. I think that they just need to cut ties with Checo. I think it's over, and I don't know what they were thinking by giving him an extension so early. If they did extend his contract out to next year, I just don't understand why. you have a whole pool of people that would absolutely love to be in that seat and can do better. And
Hmm.
again, I just go back to Checo's attitude. I just don't understand it. Like it's just like almost like he's waving his finger at Red Bull and Christian Horner and the rest of the group, which I think is a fatal mistake because if you mess with those people, your career with them is over. So I don't know.
I
I guess
mean,
we're just gonna have to
shit,
see.
they could have put Sainz in that chair.
Yeah, I think that was a missed opportunity. I think they should have put Science in that because well, one, it's Signs, and he's even got third on the podium this weekend, right? So Signs is an excellent
And
driver.
isn't Sainz even a former RB Academy guy anyway?
Yeah,
Isn't that
yeah,
where he first
yeah,
started?
exactly.
Yeah.
He started there, so yeah. But now he's going to a Williams that apparently I found out this morning has no sponsor. So that's an issue too. And that poor team is, I think they've had 16 crashes or something like that.
Oh
And
yeah. Yeah, they're
and
basically out of cash. They're just
they're
hoping to get through
done.
this weekend.
Exactly. You know what? If I were them, I wouldn't have even bothered this weekend. To be perfectly clear, like we're not
They
going to
don't have a
risk.
choice because they get the FIA gives them big fines if they don't show up,
Oh,
like
I
huge
guess that's true.
penalties.
Yeah, but that's damn it. Because I mean, well, you have to weigh though. Is like, do you just tell your drivers? Do you just tell Albon and Colapinto, hey, just putt around. Don't fight anything. Don't worry about trying to gain anything.
Kind of, because we have no spares.
Yeah, yeah. All of our chassis
We
are
have no
destroyed.
spares.
And I'm
Right.
sorry, I'm going to
Yeah.
go back to a subject here too. Was putting Colapinto in the best move because he's done the same amount of fucking damage as Sargent was doing? Like, did it
Yeah.
really matter? Like, did you have to cut off ports? I know Logan isn't the greatest. I get it, but it didn't really seem to help either. So I don't know. I feel bad for the team. I feel bad for Williams as a whole, and hopefully with Carlos they can gain some footing. I hope they can.
I hope they can too. Yeah, it'll be an interesting driver carousel for those seats that have not yet been decided. But before we let go of the whole Red Bull thing, I'm really kind of grooving on this whole Max and George Russell storyline that's evolved here, and it's really funny.
I love it.
You want to let everybody know about this, John, and because I don't even know where to begin with this because there's so much there.
So this all started when we all of a sudden hear Max had to take a one grid place penalty for impeding a driver. That driver was George, and apparently at the driver's
And that was
meeting
last week in
during the
Qatar,
FIA
right?
that was at Qatar. For some reason, like, okay, and when George did that, or when Max impeded him, George wasn't on a lap. He was just like on an out lap or something. It wasn't a lap that was going to affect anybody's pole position time or qualifying time. But apparently, George had raised such a massive stink about it in the drivers' meeting with the FIA. The FIA relented for some reason. I don't know why they did this, and said, okay, you get pole, and now Max gets a 1 point or one place position. And it became this thing where Max comes out and says, you know what? He's a fucking backstabber. I've never seen another driver, and I'm sort of paraphrasing, I've never seen another driver try to screw over another driver so hard like this. And then George fires back with, well, he said he was going to put me in a wall. And now Max is fired back with, I never said that, and nobody knows what George is really like behind the scenes. He acts all gentlemanly in front of the camera, but when you get him behind the scenes, the guy's a bastard. Like, what? It's just this big, like, almost high school-esque sort of fight. But it's always been a fight in these sort of Formula One's always seen these sort of things, right? But this one is just sort of funny because I think it's kind of 50-50 here. It's like, would you both shut up?
It is, but it's like a pair of 13-year-old schoolgirls, arguing over something stupid, and Russell going, "Oh, he said he's going to put me on my fucking head into the wall," and you're right. Max is like, "Yeah, he says one thing in front of the press and another thing behind the scenes," and it's like, okay, first of all, Max, and I don't know if you saw the meme, John. It was like some kid sitting at the piano and like giving the stink eye to the side eye sort of a deal is like the number of fucks that Max Verstappen gives about what George has to say.
I've seen it. Paul
But
Tracy put that up. I saw him put that up.
oh, that's the one. Yes, Paul Tracy put it up. That's where I saw it.
Yeah.
So, but it's like Max, really, you're generally at the center of most of this shit. You know, whether it was now George or previously with Lewis or with Ricardo or why, you know, and but the thing with Max though is still, and this is one level of maturity that I have yet to see out of him is that he hasn't found himself the ability to not engage. He still
Yeah.
has to say something, do something, crowd somebody, give him a slide job on the track, whatever. He can't just leave it be and just let it die and let them, you know, burn themselves to the ground, so to speak.
Yeah, he's never been one to sit back and just, let people say what they want. Like, he has a real problem with the British press, right? And apparently the British press has a problem with him. So that fight started for a bit. And also, what this also has sort of rekindled is the fight between Toto and Christian Horner. Because Toto says the other day, oh, well, Christian Horner is just nothing but like a little terrier. And Horner comes out with, well, I rather like terriers, and I had two. I'd rather be a terrier than a wolf. Oh my God. So that started all over again. And let's not forget, too, George has also brought up the 2021 fight between Max and Lewis and apparently this is still in the zeitgeist of Mercedes is the very controversial 2021 fight. And that was brought up again. Like, holy fuck, I thought we were beyond that. It's like, there's nothing you could do about it. But yet, here George was bringing it up again. And now Toto and Christian are fighting again. It's like, there's this real, like, almost hatred between Red Bull and Mercedes. I think we're not seeing all of it. And I'm just at this point, just like, why don't you all just get in an octagon and just work it out?
Right. I mean, it's literally, for the amount of money that all these guys get paid, whether it's Total
Oh, yeah.
Wolf or any of the team principals or the drivers, and yet they want to resort to these so juvenile, arguments. It's almost like, with it being the holiday season, it's almost like you have the two sides of your family over for Thanksgiving dinner that you hate, and it's going to be an argument, but sometimes they play
Yeah.
nice until the drunk uncle has a little too many, right? And then
Right.
all of a sudden, we've ripped the Band-Aid off and we started it all over again.
And I'm
Anyway,
usually the drunk uncle. I
um,
just want to point that out on the side note.
well, that's way better than being the stroked out uncle for sure.
You got a point. You got a point. Yeah,
Uh,
it's just so funny
um,
to me how these two are going at it like that. I was hoping this weekend that George and Max would qualify in the front row together, just so it could be like
yeah, right,
an Alan Prost and a Senna thing where they're just like first turn, take each other out.
just
They're both fine. Everybody
right,
else goes on about their day.
right. And it's interesting to me too, as we kind of move into another topic here, is with all these team principals, throwing shade at each other and whatnot. And I know, Zach Brown from McLaren has done that to an extent, but he's largely kind of come out of this as being, the level-headed one, more or less, especially when you compare it to Helmut and Toto and Christian. And what he's been able to do with McLaren. And like we said earlier in the show, they're sitting in the lead of the constructors championship. I mean, Lando's second in drivers championship points, and Piastri I think is fourth. So just in a matter of what, a season and a half, they've made a huge about face. And kudos to them, Zach, and all. And they continue. It's like every day you see some social media release about some new sponsor that they've got. I'm like,
Yes. Yeah.
how are they that good at that? But kudos to them for making it happen because they are,
Yeah.
to your point earlier, John. I think they are going to be considered probably an early season front runner for the 2025 championship.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, what was it like 2 years ago? They were just a clown show. It's like, man, what is going on with McLaren? And been a
Right.
complete about face. It's been a complete about face, which I'm very happy about because I like Zach. I like Lando. I like Oscar. And I've even said I think one day Oscar's going to win a championship himself. To be honest, I said that I think within 5 years that's going to happen of his career. But the strategy so far has been absolutely phenomenal. I was questioning the whole papaya rules, as many of us were in the beginning. It's like, well, we don't really have a number one driver, so we're going to let them do their thing. Then you have something like Monza happen where Oscar's just so like, cool, and just blows away Lando like he's not even there. And I just hope that next year, though, that they have more of a stable understanding as to what they need to be, what Oscar needs to be, what Lando needs to be. I think Lando needs to be the number one driver because he has not by much, but he has outperformed Oscar most of the time. And I think, and we've seen that Oscar can be a damn good wingman. So I think with going into next season, if they really hunker down, if they really, keep their shit together and everything goes as it has been, I think McLaren is gonna, of course, it's a very, very, very tough thing to predict. But just now, I'll predict it now. I think that Red Bull is going to fall a little bit off, especially depending upon if they have Checo or not. That's going to be also a big question, which we don't really have the answer to yet. But if things are as they are, I think McLaren is going to win the drivers and constructors championship.
I could easily see that because I feel like as we look through, and certainly the driver changes and seat changes going into next year are not fully settled yet, even though most of them are. But I feel like McLaren has the best and most settled driver lineup with Lando and Oscar. The only other driver lineup I could see being close would be at Ferrari with Lewis and Leclerc. However, the thing with that situation is that Lewis will be new to the team. Newey will be new to the. Actually, I take that back. Newey's going to Aston Martin, but that whole dynamic.
I wish Newey was going to Ferrari.
I know, but just that dynamic of inter-team, personal stuff, interpersonal relationships, dynamics, whatever. Lando and Oscar have basically grown up together for the last 2 seasons.
Yes.
So that continuity really bodes well for them. The Ferrari stuff, there's going to be, a little bit of, pissing on each other's spot like dogs do to see, if Lewis is going to reassert himself as the true number one, or if Leclerc is going to say, screw that, and that sort of thing. But then we got, Red Bull is certainly well in disarray with Newey leaving and Checo. They're going to have to get a new driver there. We already talked about Williams. Alpine's been... Well, and Alpine's been a fucking shit show, all year long. You got Aston Martin, and for the love of God, are we ever going to get, the kid to just go play tennis? Can we ever get Lance to just leave and go play tennis, like you said?
No, it's not going to happen because I think Lawrence is forcing Lance to drive. I really think that. I think it's this whole Lawrence living his life vicariously because he's an old man now. Obviously, he can't be a Formula One driver. But I think that entire it's and Alonso's going to retire soon. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. He and I are virtually the same age. I think he's 42, 43. I'm 45. How much longer can that man stay in a car? Granted, he's still a phenomenal driver. Don't get me wrong, and I think he'll always move on to some other sport, just like K-Mag. He's going to go drive for BMW now in the sports car world. Mm-hmm. But Alonso can't be there forever. Then you have Lance Stroll, which you're going to be stuck with for God knows how long. And you're going to have drivers who are going to be like, well, you're going to Aston Martin. Good luck with Lance. That's going to be what it's going to boil down to. So I'm not really sure, that driver, whoever they may be in the future, is going to have to, in my mind, run their own race. Because Lance just is not a good second driver for sure, which is what he is right now. I can't imagine him being a first driver. Could you imagine how bad he's been being the second driver to Lance Stroll, and the man is wrecking or making the dumbest of mistakes still to this day, by the way. And you're in that position. I wouldn't want to be there. I wouldn't want to be at Aston Martin.
No. I mean, especially like you said, if and when Alonso retires, Stroll apparently runs kind of with an iron fist, but I mean, Newey's only going to be around for a few more years as well because he was getting ready to just go on permanent gardening leave because he was actually even debating whether or not he wanted to come back.
Sure. Yeah. Well, they backed up the money truck, so there it goes. That money talks. So, but I did want to mention though. I know that Alpine has been terrible, but man, Pierre Gasly has been just phenomenal with that tractor he has to drive. I'm all praise to that guy, man. I mean, it shows you how really good Pierre Gasly actually is. And he sort of stays in the background. And also, I saw a really fun statistic the other day. They had how much money each driver has cost each team as far as like wrecks and whatever else. Crash damage. Pierre Gasly, I think it was $0.
Nice.
That man has not cost.
Thank God for Pierre Gasly.
Right, exactly. I thought it was like that's a cool, great guy. You know, Ocon's out this weekend. They already booted him off. He's going to Haas next year. You know, Ocon is a different story, but yeah, that Alpine is a strange deal. Kick Sauber's in a whole other realm of eternal darkness with both Jean Yu and uh, Bottas leaving.
Bottas.
I don't know what they're doing there.
Well, did
Bottas,
you
I guess,
hear? Speaking of Bottas,
is he going back to
go ahead.
Mercedes?
Well, I had heard Sauber a little bit mentioned there, and I also heard he's reconsidering a possible IndyCar move.
I had not heard that. That would be fun.
Yes, and I think it was. I can't. There was one other driver. I can't remember if it was K Mag or if it was Hulkenberg. I thought I saw were considering just because of the allure of running the 500.
Oh,
Even
yeah,
after
that's true.
Grosjean and Bourdais, but and Logan Sargent. Speaking of Logan Sargent, he did get a test with the Meyer Shank IndyCar team about a week or two ago in the I think down in Sebring. Not and then they came right out and said, yeah, we don't have a place for him, but we're going to test him.
How do you think Logan Sargent would do in Indy?
I don't know. I feel like for that kid, he's got to go someplace where he can reestablish his confidence because I feel like his confidence was rocked, and then he got unceremoniously booted from an unceremonious team at this point in time. So I think he just needs to find a place where he can, for lack of a better term, find some quick and easy success just to get his confidence back about him.
Yeah.
But I mean,
yeah, I still feel bad about
who
that,
knows?
but it is what it is, and I understand that he also it's one of those Checo deals, right? He brings in a lot of money from just his own family because I believe his family is
hmm
quite wealthy, and that's
Yep.
sort of a deal where it's almost like a Lance Stroll or a Checo. Hey, there's all this money behind me, but I might crash your car. Sorry about that. I don't know
Right.
how I feel about that, but yeah, let's see. What other changes do we have here that are going in as far as we're talking about driver changes? We still don't know what RB is going to do with Checo. Um, Ferrari is obviously established, which that will be interesting. I think because you're going to have Lewis really trying to get. I think he really believes that Ferrari is going to get him to that 8th championship. I don't know if I necessarily believe that because then you have an issue where my thought is on that. If Lewis is good enough to drive the same car as Leclerc is driving to get to a championship, well, Leclerc is going to think the same damn thing. I'm just saying. I don't know how that's going to work out. Especially, I don't know. I hope it doesn't end up becoming like a Nico Rosberg situation with Lewis all over again, where you're going to have two guys just eventually like end up hating each other on the same team. I hope not. But it's just weird. So what are your thoughts on at least what we know of in the current drivers' roles as far as what's changing for next season?
Hey, I mean, I think honestly, there's always a percentage of the driver shuffling each year that's effectively predictable, right? But the ones that are like the bigger names, it's like, okay, I think Checo is going to be the biggest question. And not that there's all these dominoes left to fall because most of the changes have already been made. But there's a couple seats available, and I think the Red Bull one's going to be the plum one once they decide what to do with Checo. And I honestly don't think he's going to survive. Once this weekend is over, I think he's going to be gone by Christmas.
I agree. I think, especially if he has a bad race this weekend, I think that's got to be it, right? I mean, I can't understand why they would keep the guy after that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he has literally done them no favors. Like we said, he's not. I mean, every other team, McLaren's had great teamwork to get that place in the constructors' championship. So has Ferrari. Even though Sainz is from about mid-season on when he knew he was getting let go, he's like, "Fuck that, I'm racing for myself." But Red Bull has not had that from Checo at all for about the last season and a half.
No, I mean even Mercedes with George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. Even though Lewis is leaving, that guy's still putting in his all. Although he had a really bad qualifying this morning, though that went straight.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, I mean it wasn't really 100% necessarily his fault either. I don't know if you caught up with it, but I believe it was K Mag, one of the Haas cars, was trying to get out of his way. Maybe, yeah, I think it was K Mag, trying to get out of Lewis's way during his final lap. And the only way to really get out of his way was to literally dive onto the side of the track. But there was one of the pylons there, or a bollard, as the British call it. But the
bollard.
pylon, the pylon went in the middle of the track, ending up underneath Lewis's car and just killing all the aerodynamics, which, as we know, are very important underneath those cars, especially with a high downforce track as Abu Dhabi. The car was just had this giant piece of foreign object underneath the car until it spit it out eventually, but it just absolutely destroyed his time, thus putting him in like,
Yeah, the
I
undertrain.
think something like 18th or something like that. It was,
Yeah, I mean, he was out in
it was
Q1.
just bad. Yeah. And also, quick update to Hulkenberg actually got a 3-place penalty because he was hit with a not listening to race director's instructions. So
I did happen to just catch that. I didn't catch the reason, but I caught the 3-place penalty right before we came on here today. But
apparently he passed 2 cars when he should not have, and they were under a no pass situation on the track. So that's that phenomenal. I mean, he was at pole position for like the last 4 cars until everybody else rolled into the McLaren's hit, and then Sainz got third. But for a minute there, I was kind of hoping like K-Mag's last race with Haas, and he might end up on pole the last race of the season with a car that has done actually pretty well. Haas has really done very well from where they were at the
they
beginning of the
have.
season to where they are now. So I thought, oh man, this is going to be super cool if Hulk gets this, but unfortunately, it ended up being not just did he not end up on the pole, but now he's got this 3-place grid penalty, which really sucks. So, but tomorrow should be
what I
quite
find,
interesting.
yes, I agree. And what I find kind of ironic and humorous, especially as we're talking about Haas, is K-Mag being kind of what caused that issue that Hamilton ran over the Bullard and it ruined the aero underneath the car. But K-Mag, I almost feel like there's like the stewards are like, do we give him penalty points for this one because he's already been suspended one race this year because
Right.
he's had
Yeah,
too
yeah.
many penalty points, and then
Right.
K-Mag's at the same time he's like, fuck it, it's my last race and I'm done. Go fuck yourselves, guys, and I'm going to
Yeah.
do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah, it's so, and I like Hulkenberg. He's always had a really good attitude. So I mean, he's actually to me, he's one of the most underrated Formula One drivers ever to hit the sport. To be honest,
I could not agree with you more.
but
I
yeah, you're
I
right.
like
I
a lot.
just loved watching him out there, and he was having a good time. And I enjoy. That's what I enjoy about Formula One when I see the drivers. You have the seriousness of Max, for instance, right? Even when he won the championship in Vegas, it was still this, except when he was getting drunk. That was hilarious. As you could watch Max get drunker and drunker as each interview progressed. It was pretty funny, but I
Sure.
enjoy it when I see drivers, especially the drivers that I really like and look up to, when they're having a good time. That just makes things feel better for some reason. I don't know why. It might sound cheesy, but that's who I am.
Well, it is that time of the year to kind of reflect a little bit, and I guess, John, as we get ready to throw the checkered flag on this first and last episode of the new format and the 2024 season, do you got any other nuggets for the good of the whole, there, my friend, before we wrap up and get ready for 2025?
Not really. I did watch the Netflix series on Senna. I watched all 6 episodes. Interesting. They took some liberties with some characters. I don't know how some even people who are still alive today would view how they were portrayed. Like Martin Brundle, it was portrayed as one of the drivers. No Bernie for. I was shocked. I was expecting Bernie to be a character that would somehow really influence or play a role in the series. Not a single thing, which was somewhat
Had to be
refreshing.
Jean-Marie Balast.
Yeah. That was a big role. They did this interesting thing where they were trying to represent the entire press as like this one reporter. It was weird because the person doesn't exist. It was odd. They also showed like the big rivalry with Alan Prost when they were both together at McLaren, and it was interesting. A little bit of I liked it a lot, especially me being a big fan of Senna. but it did do that thing where it was very hero worshipy, and really at no time was ever center wrong in what they showed. Right? I'm just like,
Right.
he was a great guy, one of the, if not the greatest race car driver in the Formula One history. That's, of course, that's debatable, but he wasn't an angel. And they kind of depicted him as an angel a little bit too much for me. I think when you watch it, because I know you haven't watched it, you should. It's enjoyable, but as I said when I was first watching it, I enjoy it for the entertainment value of it, not as a documentary. If you're going into this thinking it's a
Yeah, not,
documentary,
not for the historic
it's not the
correctness.
historically accurate thing you think it might be if you look at it from that point of view. If you just enjoy it and just sort of take in those big moments he had, then I think that's the better way to view it. And I think it's more enjoyable in that aspect.
Fair point. Fair point. Yep,
Yeah.
I'm definitely
So that's
going
it.
to check that out. You know,
Yeah, that's all I got.
speaking of, you mentioned Bernie. Did you see that at the ripe old age of, what is he now, 95, 96? He's finally
Something
selling
like
his
that.
extensive race car collection. I don't know if you
I
saw
heard
that or
about
not,
that. I saw that there's like a whole interview and there's a whole video on, you can go through what he's got, and I'm sure whatever he has is absolutely incredible. What he's gonna, I mean, the guy's already a bazillionaire. I don't know what in the world he's selling these off
well,
for. I don't.
his like 5-year-old kid and his that kid's kids are going to be set for generations because
Sure.
yeah, like I said, when I heard he was like 90 or 92 and he was having a baby, I'm like, the guy is either the most loathsome individual on the planet or he's my hero. I can't decide which.
I don't know. I don't know. I heard it too, and I'm just like, man, I hope I have that sort of energy when I'm that age, if I even make it to that age. But whatever, Bernie,
Seriously.
you do your thing.
Seriously.
I think orneriness just keeps him alive, to be honest.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah.
All right, man. All right, Seventh Gear Overrev fans, that will do it for us on this week's episode. Our first, as we said, in about 6 months' time, and our last one for the 2024 season. And welcome to the new format. We hope you all enjoy it. We want to make sure that you give us your feedback, so make sure you hit us up on all of our social media platforms, on Facebook and on Instagram and on X. Obviously, you can find myself on those social media platforms as well as the show. You can also find John at Late Night Lap. I know he's talked about that in the past, and we really look forward to, after the holiday break here, to getting back into regular weekly content on this format. And we've got some great guests just waiting for that phone call. We've got Derek Daly coming back on to talk about his book. We've got Derek Bell, Mr. Le Mans. We've got Emanuele Pirro ready to come on. We've got Jack Baldwin, former GTO champion in the IMSA Sports Car Series. We've got Shelby Blackstock. We've got Ari Leindyke Sr. coming on and revisiting with some of our old friends like Paul Page and Willie T. Ribbs and so many more. And we invite you to come along the ride with us here as we move into this new era of the show in 2025. And as always, John and JD, I want to thank you guys both, John, for your friendship and for being a great co-host all this time and hanging with us as we went through this sort of reboot here of the show. So thank you very much. Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you, John. And we'll see you in the new year.